Today we're going to talk about something really important, how to support families who are raising children who are medically fragile. So glad you're here. When it comes to churches supporting families who are dealing with tough stuff, like raising a child who's medically fragile, we often focus on what a family may need. But how often do we stop and ask how they feel? This question matters, because before we can truly provide what a family needs from the church, we first have to understand what coming to church might feel like for their family. Children who are medically fragile, what families might be feeling at church. Children who are medically fragile have a chronic condition or conditions that require ongoing medical attention that limits their daily activities. They often rely on special equipment like feeding tubes or ventilators. They're more likely to need frequent hospital stays or surgeries. And even when they are home, they may require a caretaker or skilled nursing. In other words, these medical conditions impact every part of their lives and their families' lives, and this includes coming to church, which is why we ask families an important question. If you're raising a child who's medically fragile, what might you be feeling when you come to church? Number 1, families might be feeling scared of germs. Germs are incredibly scary for families who have children who are medically fragile. Common viruses that may be inconvenient for most may be very dangerous for kids who already have breathing or digestive issues, or those who are immunocompromised. Sometimes this can even lead to serious illness. There's other ways that germs can cause problems too. Getting sick may interfere with a child's scheduled medical treatment plan, canceling or postponing needed appointments. Or if family members get sick, they may not be able to help care for a child or be present at important medical appointments to provide comfort. So what can churches do to help? Well, if someone is sick, they should stay home. And this includes kiddos too, which means that guidelines that say that visibly ill children will not be accepted into classrooms need to be enforced. And of course, sanitizing classroom space and toys between each service is very helpful too. But perhaps most importantly, if you notice that a family who has a child who is medically fragile isn't coming to church anymore, don't assume that they just aren't interested, because chances are they do want to be part of the church, but they're trying to protect their child from germs. So reach out and see if there's a different way to connect that may feel better for them. Number 2, families might be feeling grateful when policies are adapted. The truth is, when medical conditions become a central part of life, the small things that most people take for granted, like getting ready for church, don't stay small. And this can feel exhausting for parents. Unfortunately, sometimes this can be part of the church experience too, especially when it comes to working with church policies that were not designed with their children's unique needs in mind. So how can churches help? Start by realizing that most church policies were not designed for people with disabilities or special needs, which means that it's likely that some of the policies your church has will not work for every family either. And if you know that a child who's medically fragile will be coming to your class, look through your policies and ask yourself, how would each apply to the child? Does the policy work as is, or is an adaptation needed? Some common policies to look at may include restroom policies, special event policies, and how to handle private nurses or caregivers in the classroom. Then reach out to the family and discuss the ways that policies can be adapted before you need them. You and your families will be grateful that you did. Number 3, families might be feeling emotional. One thing that often is overlooked when it comes to families who have medically fragile children is trauma. Medical trauma, which can come from receiving a life-altering diagnosis or watching a child struggle, or even being part of repeated medical procedures, is traumatic. And this can lead to some pretty big emotions. So how can churches help families navigate this? Well, start by understanding that these feelings may get triggered sometimes in ways that you may not expect. This may look like an emotional outburst that seems out of proportion to the circumstance, like tears or anger over something you may think is no big deal. Or it may look like a family withdrawing from the church for what appears to be no apparent reason. And while you may not know why someone responds to something the way they do, you can know how you should respond. with grace and without judgment. Just be there for them by giving them a safe place to be honest and listening to understand, even when it's messy. Because one of the best ways to show Christ's love is to let people know that sometimes it's okay to not be okay. Number 4, families might be feeling uncomfortable asking for help again. So we're going to stop for just a moment because this next point is so important. As we've learned, families who are raising children who are medically fragile often spend a lot of time in the hospital, which means they're going to need some help at home. But when we asked families about this, they shared something important. They said the more often that they need help, the harder it becomes to ask for it. Some even said that they are afraid that they may become a burden to the church. Now, I don't know what it feels like to be a parent of a child who's medically fragile, but I do know what it feels like to be part of the church, as do many of you who are watching this right now. And I do know that I don't ever want any family to feel like they might be a burden. So church, let's stop waiting for families to ask for help and let's start offering it instead. Check back in soon as we learn how to help families through tangible support, because no family should ever feel alone. There's one more thing before you go. Not every family is going to have the same feelings about church, but there is one thing that we want every family to feel, and that is loved. Thanks for joining us today. See you next time.